And the different ways that people may use to try to trick our systems, and make sure that our systems are staying ahead of what's necessary to make sure that we are managing that.
So it sounds like bury, to the extent that you can, things that are not credible sources and don't recommend. So it sounds like bury, to the extent that you can, things that are not credible sources and don't recommend.
This is a call for an uprising. Welcome to today's show. Hard not to laugh, right? At Susan Wojcicki. For those of you that don't know, that is the CEO of YouTube at the World Economic Forum, talking about burying content creators who they don't deem as credible sources. On top of that, I don't know who she could have been talking about people who are tricking their algorithms. I mean, that's just criminal. Maybe you should take the jobs away from the robots and give them back to the humans, because humans will always be greater than machines. So maybe people should wonder why Susan Wojcicki is there, right? The CEO of YouTube, a website that's supposed to be for you, the people, which is really just another platform they use to push propaganda and silence people that are actually speaking truth. We all know the story. We've seen so many content creators over the years who have been run off of YouTube because they've had their channels deleted. And, you're speaking to one here. It only took it long enough to get some of them back, a few years of manual reviews and constant harassment of, sending them things to check my channels because, well, they don't really know what I'm talking about, so they can't really censor it when you're speaking around, well, words that they deem to be dangerous and topics they deem to be dangerous. So listen to Susan. I'm going to play some of this stuff. I don't know how people aren't concerned, whatever your politics are, liberal or Republican, how we're allowing these people who we did not elect or select to be in these positions to censor what people can and can't say based on what they deem as credible sources. The biggest source of misinformation is, CNN, the mainstream media, the stuff that they put out. That's the stuff they promote. And then anybody else who has a difference of opinion, they just deem you misinformation or not a credible source when there's actually research to show you these things. A lot of times, when all this censorship started, it was people breaking down actual video that was put on the news of a lot of these events that occurred at The Hook and other places and showing flat out with their own video proof what they thought was going on. And they deem that dangerous. And now, forget it. You can't even say certain things if you hurt somebody's feelings. It's hate speech. If you say anything that's against, certain stuff going on, well, Susan will tell you, then it's considered disinformation.
Okay. Well, we'll see how that continues.
Yeah.
I can't not ask you about misinformation. It is a problem that plagues every social media platform, but it definitely plagues YouTube. And I know you've done a lot to put policies in place, tweak algorithms, to recommend the right things. But I have to wonder, in January, a global coalition of fact-checking organizations found YouTube to be a major conduit of fake news, despite all that you've put in place. So is this just a flaw in social media platforms that cannot be rectified? I mean, can we ever actually solve this, or is it just a problem that cannot be solved in the current way of platforms being operated?
We're definitely investing a huge amount to make sure that we're fighting misinformation, and there are a number of different ways that we look at this. So the first would be, from a policy standpoint, we would look at content that we would think about in terms of being violative of our policies. So if you look at COVID, for example, we came up with 10 different policies that we said would be violative. Like, an example of that would be saying that COVID came from something other than a virus. And we did see people attacking 5G equipment, for example, because they thought that it was causing COVID. And so that would just be an example of a policy that we would remove. So we do remove content based on those policies. We actually publish that in a transparency report. The second one would be really raising up authoritative information. So if you are dealing with a sensitive subject like news, health, science, we are going to make sure that what we're recommending is coming from a trusted, well-known publisher that can be reliable. And if you think about how Google works, it's very similar. Like, if you type in cancer, or you type in COVID, what you're going to get are going to be names that you recognize. They're not going to be someone that just published a web page yesterday. So it's very similar with regard to how we handle that on YouTube. The third is making sure that if there's content that's borderline content that technically meets our policy but is lower quality, that's content that we basically will not recommend to our users. Our users could still access it, but they will not recommend it. And then lastly, we're just really careful about what we monetize. So we always want to make sure that there's no incentive. So for example, with regard to climate change, we don't monetize any kind of climate change material. So there's no incentive for you to keep publishing that material that is propagating something that is generally understood as not accurate information. So, I mean, misinformation is not new to the internet. It's been around since before, for all time. But we definitely see that there is a role for, and there is a risk, and that's why we have put a lot of effort. This report that you cited, I haven't seen that report, but there certainly are many other reports that give us a good grade there. And I think if you look at the work that we have done across the board, it really shows a very significant improvement. We came out with a set of data that we thought was really useful, which is how much content that is violative are we not catching with our enforcement. And that is about 10 to 12 videos per 100,000 views. And if you look at the chart in terms of how that's changed over time, that number has come down significantly, and our plan is to continue to work on it and make sure that we continue to reduce that.
So it sounds like bury, to the extent that you can, things that are not credible sources and don't recommend, but also still sounds like a work in progress. Do you think it always will be a work in progress?
I think there'll always be work that we have to do because there will always be incentives for people to be creating misinformation. And the challenge will be to keep staying ahead of that and make sure that we are understanding what they are and the different ways that people may use to try to trick our systems and make sure that our systems are staying ahead of what's necessary to make sure that we are managing that. So I think there'll always be work, but after all this work that we have put in, this has been a huge initiative for us for at least over, 5-6 years. I think we've come a long way, and I would challenge you, if you go and you look and you do a search or you look at your homepage in terms of what you're seeing, you're going to see content when it comes to sensitive topics. You're going to see them coming from more authoritative sources.
So we're allowing these Nazis to gather together to decide what should be put on platforms, who should be able to monetize or not be monetized, what should be able to be discussed, and who should be removed. And of course, as you heard earlier, she mentioned people tricking the algorithm, those horrible, horrible people that are outsmarting computers because, well, fellow humans have decided that they want to censor free speech in a country that was built on free speech. Pretty incredible, isn't it? And these are the people in power in our country. And these are the people who are telling you, hey, we're doing it for the betterment of humanity. And we all want equality. And we don't want billions of dollars and to put you in the lower class. Oh, right. That's exactly what they want. They're going to put everybody in the lower class and nobody else is going to be invited to the rich class, the high class, the first class, whatever you want to call it. It'll just be people like Susan Wojcicki. And then everyone will go, how did we get to this point? They'll go, oh, because you let these people control information flows, you let them control free speech, you let them control the pulse of the nation, and you got brainwashed into accepting communism. Anybody concerned that Susan's at this event? I mean, how many content creators, other than truthers, would cover this and say, why is she there? This is a globalist event, right? If it doesn't show you the power that they wield and how they need to get on Susan about, well, here's more things that we need censored. Don't talk about Klaus Schwab. Don't let people question the Great Reset, right? I mean, we've already seen underneath the videos, if you type in Great Reset as tags or if you put it in the title of your video, that they all automatically will put their dismissal Wikipedia box, which again, anytime you see the Wikipedia box, you automatically know to believe the opposite because they're so desperate. They do it for Illuminati, they do it for climate change, they do it for the 1-9er, they do it for the Great Reset, all factual things that we're all trying to talk about. And they want to make sure that you have their definition of what it is and why it was caused and what the real meaning behind it is. You even have it for chemtrails. You have it for, I think, for masonry at this point. It's almost like, you just have to misspell words And of course, eventually the algorithm will catch on to that. But the more that we can continue to create new words and new languages, the algorithm isn't going to be able to pick it up on it. And that's the point of stuff that I'm trying to do. Is not just misspell words and titles, is to just give things flat out new names. And then, maybe only our community understands it, but guess what? We can communicate with each other without being censored by these lunatics who shouldn't even be in power, who are giving up our rights and sovereignty, and who are over there trying to plot the next, catastrophe. They flat out tell you in the video I did yesterday, if you didn't see it, oh, catastrophe after catastrophe. I mean, who do you think's behind it? These people are sitting there going, we're going to come in and we're going to save the day. We care about the world. We're the ones who are in power and can do that. Nobody elected you. Nobody really honestly trusts you, obviously. I mean, I don't even know if the liberal people trust these people. But you're the ones who are talking about climate change for 10 days, yet you're all flying there on private jets and driving up in big trucks. All right, that makes perfect sense. And then the problem is that we don't have people who band together as humans against these elites. They continue to love these people and, look up to them and drool and worship the elites. And even though the liberals pretend like, oh, we need to get rid of the rich class and we need everybody to be equal, except for these people, right? They don't have to play by any of the rules. And unfortunately, a lot of these liberal people have been convinced that they're not going to have to play by the rules. And they think that they actually care about them. They think that, people like Susan and these elites care about the LGBT and all that. When push comes to shove and it's time to reveal themselves, they're going to turn on everybody and everything. And these people are going to go, ooh, oh, what happened? What happened? Oh, you should have, tried to protect your rights instead of take away rights from other people. So there's Susan at the World Economic Forum. I mean, how do the shareholders of Google feel about that? The stock should just plummet. But of course, we know the stocks are all fake and they move the way that they want them to move because there's really no science to it. I mean, there's no anything to it. It's just gambling. But you'd think maybe it would tumble because people in America here should probably be like, why are these people all meeting and plotting together? What power are we giving these platforms where they're censoring speech? But nobody seems to care about that kind of stuff. And all we can do, people like me and you, is continue to work around their garbage. And they're going to say, well, our quantum computers are going to catch up, and eventually you're not going to be able to trick them. Oh, yeah, well, Johnny Five, bring Johnny Five on. Johnny Five's alive, that's fine, so am I. So we'll see if, a world where robots are smarter and better than humans, we'll see how much they can continue to not just replace us, outsmart us. Right? And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about other people out there who are outsmarting the algorithm, of course, because I'm just playing by the rules. Every single guideline that they have on here, I'm playing by. I mean, if you want to tell me that, if I'm saying something with a different word that I mean this, that's all stuff that, you could take up in a courtroom. Because if it's not the exact word, how can you prove that it means one thing versus the other? And then we can go on and on and on, just like the way they've created hate speech, where they could put anything into hate speech as long as it fits their narrative. And they could say, they could say the word the is hate speech, or by not saying somebody's pronoun without having a clue that the person goes by pronouns is hate speech. And then they could dock you and censor you and all that kind of stuff because that's what they want. And that's what people don't realize. They're playing into everyone's sensitivities with these things like hate speech so that they can continue to censor. And then it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. And people are going to realize, whoa, maybe we went a little too far. Yeah, you think? So